This is your afternoon tonic.
Have your thoughts led you into the quicksand of pessimism? Has the tide of emotion pulled you beneath the waves of reason? Perhaps you hang onto the cliffs of hope by a fingernail. All is lost, friends. We invite you to anguish with us in the pit of despair.
Yeah!
That's it.
The pit of despair.
The pit of despair.
So this is where we get to be dark, formally. A lot of our content is dark,
Formally dark.
but this is pessimism, like acknowledged pessimism.
What I like about this, just like a meta conversation quickly about this segment. I feel like my music is way darker than your music.
Yeah.
But this segment is your segment. It was your idea. You made the clip.
I did.
I feel like you get darker in our conversations. You get darker than I do.
Dude,
But my music is way darker than yours.
I am a hopeless person most of the time.
But you make such fun music.
I spend days in bed being depressed, not doing anything.
You're too depressed, so your music has to make you happy. I'm too happy. I was like, I need to bum myself out.
Yeah, that's what it is. Well, I mean, what else are you gonna do when you live in a 10,000 square foot house next to Joe Rogan? I mean, you got to find something to bring you down. So, yeah, and just so everyone knows, that was me playing keys. That was not a sample. That was me. Yeah, those arpeggios, I practiced that for at least 15 minutes.
I think we should hear it again.
Okay, fine, one more time.
Here we go.
You hear that run? That was
Have
me.
your thoughts led you into the quicksand of pessimism? Has the tide of emotion pulled you beneath the waves of reason? Perhaps you hang onto the cliffs of hope by a fingernail. All is lost, friends. We invite you to anguish with us in the pit of despair.
What do you think of that inversion?
I love it.
Good.
It's great.
That little step up, walk up. So today for the pit of despair, I want to talk about
you gotta stop laughing. We have to start crying.
You know what they say? The opposites are actually closer to each other than they are to the center. So laughter and crying are both the same, just in different ways. But anyways, let's talk about the glamorous life of being a musician. Anthony, gigs haven't been all that great. Starting to get a few more now.
Yeah.
I've been having to do a lot of lower
I
level
imagine
work.
that given the inflation, your wages have gone up a little bit.
It's funny you should say that. They actually haven't.
Right.
They haven't gone up. They've actually gone down.
Good. That makes sense.
But this is where it gets funny. Oh, and I know you live in the great nation of Texas, but here in California, it's not at all uncommon to see gas over $6. I think typically right now I'm seeing it like $5.75. So driving to a gig costs an extra few bucks each time now, so that's great. But yeah. So in the glamorous lifestyle that I lead, that I live,
right,
that I walk through as a transient, gigs haven't been great. They're coming back a little bit, but not really.
Yep.
For other people, they seem to be doing dandy as candy. But for myself, not so much. So I've been doing a lot of high school work.
Right.
Stuff that I didn't have to do for the past few years because I had other opportunities. But right now, no, I still have a mortgage, still need to pay bills. I was so excited that I got this big offer to do a professional gig.
Uh-huh.
I'm still excited to do the professional gig because it's so much fun. However, this morning I was booked to do more high school work. And you know what happened? Anthony, do you know what happened to me?
What happened to you?
I opened the email and I find out that I'm getting paid like $20 more an hour.
For the high school.
For the high school gig. Over the professional gig.
Yep.
It's over, man. It's over.
I bet actually the standards might be slightly lower even at the high school gig too for your performance.
Are you kidding me? If I just show up and play it at, a third of my capacity?
Right.
Yeah. It's insane.
Right, but the professional gig is definitely the kind of gig where you got to show up and play it right.
Oh yeah, if I make a mistake, I could get pulled off the show.
Right.
I would imagine. I mean, not just one mistake.
But if you make a bad mistake,
it depends on how bad it is. I remember one time I made a really bad mistake at a show.
Right.
I stepped in a hole is the expression for anyone that's not a musician.
Nice.
It would mean
this is now a hybrid segment.
Sorry, hybrid. Yes, a partial gig fail, partial pit of despair. But I
A
stepped
gig
in a
fail
hole.
can lead to a pit of despair for sure.
There's a correlation there. Yeah. But I stepped in a hole, meaning that you're not supposed to play anything, and then you
Oh,
do.
ouch.
And it was just because I misread what I thought was a cue, and it
Yeah.
wasn't. And I would, ha! It's like, oh,
That everyone
my
looked at
bad. And it was just dialogue, and the entire pit whoosh, turns their head like, what the heck are you doing? So, and I didn't get fired. I actually talked to the MD afterward, and they're like, "Oh, that was just a fluke. Like, don't worry about it."
you. Yeah,
Right? And it was fine.
that's
Maybe
good.
it was. Maybe it wasn't.
I
Who
don't know.
knows? It doesn't matter. But yeah, but I'm in a bit of despair because uh, it looks to me as if the place that I've achieved in my playing and my abilities,
Yep.
there's a lot of people that could do the tier level of work that I'm doing, but there's also not. And what I
Right.
mean by that is that the people that can do it, a lot of them are a tier above me,
Yep.
right? And they will not take these gigs because they don't pay enough.
Right.
There's people below me that would take them, but I might be better equipped for some of these gigs than they are slightly,
Yep.
right? There's probably also people that are better than me that just haven't had the opportunity,
Right.
right? But there's still a fair amount of despair now because I'm making more money doing a high school gig than I am doing a
Doing
professional
lower tier
production
gigs. Yep.
in a 1,500 person theater
Yeah.
with union actors, and I'm making less money there.
Yeah.
Less money there than I am working for this high school. Also, it would appear to me that the professional gig, I will be hired as an employee because of the tremendous leadership of our state
Right.
government
So
here
you'll
in
be
California
making
with
even
AB
less
5.
money. Yeah.
I'll be making less money. I mean, granted, I might get a tax rebate. I might. But I'm not going to get my social back. And
Right.
at this point, I mean, that could be a whole nother segment for a pit of despair. the social security, like that's going to be worth much later.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm making more money straight up working for a high school.
Yeah.
It's a little rough. I think I've capped out, man.
Well,
think
that's I feel like that is the despair, right? That's because are these gigs going to change? This is what I think about all the time. Is people talk about how it's not just those musical theater gigs, it's bar gigs too.
Mm-hmm.
Everything pays the same that it paid 10, 20 years ago.
So, do you?
No wages have changed for musicians in decades.
There was this joke. I'm sure you've heard it. You've dabbled in the jazzery. There's this joke that jazz gigs pay the same now as they did to Charlie Parker, $50 for the night.
Yeah.
And that's true. Not all of them,
true.
but a lot of them are. Like, and I was doing back when I was doing more of that type of work, like casuals at restaurants and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was very common for the call to be $75 or $90. That's not near $50 back in the day.
I feel like it's a value
with the rate of
problem,
inflation,
right?
Well, it's not valued. That's the problem, is that music doesn't have value. The value of it has been diminished. I think that it's so available, it has no scarcity now.
Well, the
we talked about
problem
this,
with
like
that,
YouTube, Spotify. You don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it has no value.
Absolutely.
There's no scarcity.
I feel like there's this weird thing where schools are actually very well funded, especially public schools.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a lot of money, and they don't know anything about the performance world. A mid-tier theater probably doesn't have that much money.
They're operating on tighter margins. Yep.
They're operating on very tight margins, and you are competing against tracks at this point.
Oh yeah.
Which are going to be perfect. And the tracks are taking up more and more and more and more and more of the space, more of the market, because you only have to pay once for tracks.
Yep.
Well, you might have to license them more than once or something, but
I'm sure
you don't have to pay them per
cheaper.
show. You don't have to pay them per service.
I can't see it being more expensive than hiring a pit. Yeah.
No way.
No.
So all you're doing, being a live musician in a pit, is acting as a novelty.
Yeah. It's so I think that it's mostly now so that when people, pay $60 or $120, for these theater tickets, $200 if they want a booth seat or whatever it is, the balcony booths,
Yep.
They want a nice seat. It's so that they can lean over the rail of the pit and go like,
hello.
look at all the
it's
instruments.
A zoo. Yeah.
It's very close. It's very close.
It's a zoo with high
Did you
expectations
say that?
on
I almost
you.
wondered if on the last show I should be like, please don't feed the orchestra.
Oh man. Well, because like a lot of those big shows in Vegas, like the Cirque du Soleil shows and stuff,
Yeah.
they are on tracks and they just have like actors pretending to be musicians.
But they also have legit musicians on some of those, or they used to.
Some of them, yeah, some of them.
Like
a
heavy.
lot of them,
I met
but a
one
lot
of the
them
bass players.
because of COVID moved to tracks. But so what they're doing is they're maintaining the illusion of musicians.
I see.
So the spell of live music is cast without having to pay for the live music.
That could be. I mean, that's happened. I told you about how that's happened in churches also, right?
They
use
have musicians pretending.
I haven't heard it as far as
It
pretending.
seems very churchly.
I've heard. I've heard. So you've experienced this, I'm sure, where you go to the place and like, where's that keyboard coming from? Where's the acoustic? Because I'm playing electric, and it'll just be a backing track that the MD is controlling with the click.
Mhm.
They'll have harmonies and all that. I've heard. I haven't seen it firsthand, but I've heard that there are some places that are using volunteer players,
Mhm.
piping them into their own ears, but then the house is only the tracks. I've heard this. I haven't confirmed it from my own experience, but I've heard it from other players that they went to a
And they
place.
don't even pay them, huh? They're volunteers.
They're volunteers,
and
and,
they're
I only
getting-
found this out because the guy that I know that
It's
was
kinda
at
dirty.
this place. Oh, it's super dirty. But the guy that was at this place was saying that he was paid, but he's playing and he can hear himself. But then he noticed, like, if he's listening to the house mix, it's that's not exactly what they did because they didn't play it that way. And they were able to put two and two together, like, oh, so
Wow.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to increase the scarcity of music, maybe, but I don't think there's any doing that now. I think it's just out there.
Yep. I mean, I think the whole NFT thing is at least trying to do that in a way.
Yeah, but that's only a very.
I mean, I'm not like on board with NFTs. I just mean I think that part of what NFTs are is an attempt to address that a little bit.
But I feel that for the most part, then NFTs are only going to appeal. The idea that it's a scarce resource means that to get a high price point, you can't.
Right. Well, that's the
Distribute
idea.
widely.
A
It has to be
non-fungible
one-
token. It's scarce.
It's one, but it's one copy then. So if it's one copy, you're only appealing to a selective audience that has resource that actually make it gainful for you to produce such items, right? You have to make a lot of money.
I mean, this was the whole thing about jazz musicians not wanting to record albums
Yeah.
because it was like anti the idea of what jazz improvisation is. It should be gone once it happens.
That's what makes it cool.
And actually, like pressing one version of a jazz improvisation is like a little lame
I remember
because you're missing what's happening in the living culture of it.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Segovia would do that. Classical guitar player, Andres Segovia, he'd only ever do one take in the studio.
Yep.
That's it. And if it had mistakes, it had mistakes. He didn't care.
Scarcity, man.
He's Segovia.
I remember one of the college professors I had at Cal State Fullerton spoke about how the recording industry wrecked classical music. That if you look at program bills, right, pre-recordings, where they were like readily available is what I should say.
Yeah.
So if you look at classical music programs in the early 1900s,
You mean concert programs?
concert programs, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to go see your Philharmonic,
Right.
right now Philharmonics were still they were prevalent.
Right.
I'm sure there's more orchestras now than there were back then. Probably. I'm not sure. I'm curious
I
about this.
bet.
I don't know for a fact, but he was sharing that it was once the recording started happening, his speculation was that these recordings led to people purchasing albums,
Yep.
and now you don't need to go to the symphony. But then what that led, because you can listen to it at your home, which is great, right?
It's fun. It's
You
always
get to
fun to listen to
expose
music.
people that maybe couldn't hear it. But then what that led to is every orchestra recording Beethoven 5, every orchestra
Mhm.
recording Mozart 40,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
see.
so on and so forth.
I
To
mean,
the
I
point
don't.
then that the audiences would expect to hear this. And so once this happened, it only took a number of a
Wow,
few decades.
Interesting.
And that's why there is no new music. If you think about the early mid 1900s.
You mean
right?
orchestras don't program new music?
No, like think about his argument was like, look at Schoenberg being at UCLA,
Mhm.
right? It was
Yeah.
very common. You look at the concert programs for LA Phil up through the 50s or so,
Yeah.
right? Always a new piece, a new
Right.
modern piece,
Because
and that was
they were
expected.
living musical tradition still.